Caroline Leavitt publicly mocked President Ibrahim Traoré at a packed international conference in Geneva, labeling his government a military regime disguised by a cheap democratic mask. The entire room froze, awaiting Traoré's reaction, a response that would soon redefine the global narrative on democracy, integrity, and true leadership. The Grand Hall in Geneva was packed. Heads of state and leading diplomats from every corner of the globe filled the rows. Their eyes were fixed on Caroline Leavitt, the prominent young American politician who had suddenly abandoned her carefully prepared speech. A tense silence hung in the air as she locked her gaze onto President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, seated calmly among other African delegates, without hesitation. Caroline's voice pierced the silence, sharp and mocking. Her words echoed firmly, each carefully chosen to humiliate and accuse. "Let's stop pretending, shall we?" Caroline said, her tone heavy with derision. "Your democracy, President Traoré, is nothing but a military regime wearing a cheap democratic mask." The room tightened with palpable tension. Journalists shifted eagerly, cameras zooming closer to capture every subtle reaction. Caroline pressed further, her voice confident and relentless. She cited various allegations: media censorship, suppression of opposition voices, rigged elections, presenting them as undeniable truths. Even though these claims remained unverified by credible international organizations, delegates exchanged anxious glances, visibly uncomfortable at the directness and harshness of her remarks. President Traoré, however, sat perfectly still. His composure was remarkable. His expression showed no sign of anger or anxiety. Instead, there was a quiet, dignified resolve, a clear reflection of his unshakable conviction. Traoré understood precisely what was unfolding, an orchestrated attempt to tarnish his image and diminish his credibility in front of the international community. Yet, he didn't flinch. His calm demeanor was not lost on the delegates watching carefully. Every person in that hall knew this was more than just a verbal confrontation, it was a defining moment. Everyone in the hall understood clearly Ibrahim Traoré's response would set the tone for the diplomatic confrontation ahead, testing both his leadership and the ideals he stood for. Caroline's cutting remarks echoed through the grand hall, creating an oppressive silence. Delegates sat frozen in place, their eyes darting anxiously between the assertive American politician and the composed figure of President Ibrahim Traoré. No one dared move, as though any small gesture might ignite further confrontation. Journalists adjusted their cameras discreetly, sensing this was the pivotal moment of the conference. The hall, earlier filled with murmurs and whispers, now felt eerily still. Time itself seemed to pause, awaiting the African president's reaction. Traoré, however, remained immovable, his expression calm, composed, yet unreadable, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere around him, internally. Though, he felt the weight of expectation pressing against his chest. He knew the eyes of the world were upon him, judging not only his response but the legitimacy of the principles he had vowed to uphold. His silence wasn't uncertainty, it was deliberate, purposeful, reflecting his determination to choose each word carefully. Caroline, sensing the lack of immediate response as a sign of vulnerability, smirked subtly, confidence radiating from her stance. She leaned slightly toward the microphone again, delivering one final, arrogant jab. "No need to hurry, Mr. President, I understand. Truth can be quite hard to swallow." "Shita, xiao." Yet, as seconds dragged into what felt like minutes, something shifted in the atmosphere. Delegates began to notice the dignity in Traoré's restraint. His quiet self-control became a powerful statement in itself, a testament to strength rather than weakness. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably, recognizing perhaps that Caroline's aggressive tone had exceeded diplomatic decorum. Everyone understood clearly now, this wasn't merely a clash of words between two politicians, it was a profound confrontation of ideals. President Traoré's next words would shape more than just the outcome of this meeting, they would resonate deeply, impacting perceptions of dignity, independence, and national sovereignty far beyond the walls of this hall. Ibrahim Traoré had never aspired to become a politician. His early years were spent in military barracks rather than government halls, shaped by discipline, honor, and loyalty. known among his peers for his quiet intensity and unwavering dedication. Ibrahim rose swiftly through the ranks, his reputation as an officer who never compromised on principles, no matter the pressure, quickly made him a respected figure within Burkina Faso's armed forces. When his nation spiraled into political turmoil and uncertainty, it was precisely Ibrahim's clarity of purpose that brought him to prominence. Citizens, weary of corruption and external interference, began to see hope in the young, principled officer who had always placed his nation's dignity above personal ambition. As Ibrahim transitioned from military service to political leadership, his values remained unchanged. Those who knew him best understood he wasn't driven by power, but by a profound responsibility to ensure his country's sovereignty and stability. This steadfast commitment, though widely admired domestically, drew suspicion and hostility from those abroad who were accustomed to influencing Burkina Faso's internal affairs. And now, sitting quietly in the Geneva conference hall, the same resolute soldier-turned-statesman faced yet another battle, one fought with words rather than weapons. As Ibrahim stepped onto the national stage, the path he chose quickly distinguished him from predecessors who willingly accepted aid with strings attached. Early in his presidency, international delegations approached him, offering generous aid packages, aid contingent upon reforms designed outside Burkina Faso's borders. Ibrahim, however, saw clearly that such offers came not from altruism, but from a desire to exert control, with quiet determination. Ibrahim declined, explaining his position succinctly in a televised address that resonated deeply across Africa. "We will never sell our dignity for aid disguised as charity," he had said, his voice calm yet firm. These words soon became a powerful rallying point for his people, embodying their shared aspirations for true independence. This principled stance, however, was met with surprise and subtle anger in foreign diplomatic circles. Western leaders, accustomed to leveraging aid for geopolitical influence, saw Ibrahim's defiance not merely as an inconvenience, but as a direct challenge to their authority. Behind diplomatic smiles, quiet resentment grew, eventually surfacing as political pressure and coordinated criticisms, like those Ibrahim was now facing in Geneva. Yet, to his supporters at home and sympathetic nations abroad, Ibrahim's refusal represented a powerful, dignified stand-proof of leadership rooted firmly in integrity and national pride. Back in the conference hall, the charged atmosphere intensified further. Caroline Leavitt, sensing her initial verbal strike had resonated, continued her aggressive campaign, unwavering. She meticulously listed alleged human rights violations by Ibrahim Traoré's administration. Each accusation she presented as factual, despite the shaky credibility of their sources, anonymous blogs, and unverified social media accounts. She confidently cited cases of journalists purportedly silenced, political opponents supposedly jailed without fair trials, and elections she claimed were orchestrated outcomes rather than democratic processes. Her voice rose assertively, echoing through the hall with condescending authority. "Let's be clear, these aren't minor mistakes. Mr. President, they're intentional abuses of power. Frankly, it's embarrassing that we're even debating your legitimacy here." Delegates in the hall shifted restlessly. Ibrahim remained composed, yet inwardly felt the sting of these relentless accusations. He recognized the tactics clearly. Caroline was not merely criticizing his governance, she was methodically painting him as a ruthless dictator before the eyes of the world. Caroline paused briefly, allowing her disdainful gaze to linger on Ibrahim. A slight, arrogant smile crept onto her lips, revealing her absolute confidence in her perceived moral high ground. Leaning slightly forward, she added, deliberately patronizing, "I suggest you reconsider your position carefully. The world is watching closely. Mr. President, though perhaps accountability is a foreign concept to your regime." Cameras continued to roll, capturing every nuance, every subtle reaction from delegates around the room. Media professionals exchanged eager glances, recognizing a narrative rapidly forming a narrative that could potentially damage Ibrahim's credibility irreparably, despite her outward confidence. However, Caroline overlooked one critical element: Ibrahim Traoré's profound sense of duty and integrity. She underestimated not only his resilience, but also the quiet power inherent in truth, plainly spoken. As she delivered each allegation, Ibrahim silently readied himself, knowing clearly that the moment to respond was swiftly approaching, a moment that would demand clarity. courage, and unshakable conviction. Throughout Caroline's relentless barrage, Ibrahim remained silent, his face calm, his eyes clear and focused. Delegates initially misread this silence as hesitation or weakness, and whispers began circulating through the hall, raising doubts about his confidence. Yet beneath this surface, calm, Ibrahim carefully weighed his words, knowing their immense significance. The stillness of his demeanor gradually shifted perceptions. Observers started recognizing a deeper strength in his silence, and intentional, deliberate restraint born from confidence rather than fear, by withholding immediate reaction. Ibrahim subtly asserted his moral authority, making it clear that impulsive anger was beneath him. His response would come, but only on his terms. After moments of intense silence, Ibrahim finally lifted his gaze, meeting Caroline's confident stare directly. His expression remained calm, poised, yet firm, revealing no trace of intimidation. Delegates leaned forward slightly, sensing the pivotal moment had arrived. Ibrahim adjusted his microphone calmly, then spoke clearly and deliberately, his voice resonating with measured strength. Respectfully, Miss Levitt, I must remind you, America is hardly qualified to lecture the world about democracy. His words immediately altered the dynamic in the room. The delegates' expressions changed visibly from apprehension and curiosity to unmistakable interest. Caroline's self-assured smile faltered slightly, revealing a hint of uncertainty behind her carefully constructed composure. Ibrahim continued, his tone steady, assertive, yet devoid of anger. You talk passionately about rights and freedoms, yet your own nation has repeatedly violated the sovereignty and stability of others in democracy's name. Ask the citizens of Iraq, Libya, or Syria if the democracy you claim to deliver with missiles and bombs improved their lives. His words hung heavily in the air, deliberately challenging the moral foundation Caroline had so arrogantly presented. Ibrahim's deliberate choice of examples forced the delegates to confront uncomfortable truths. No longer a passive recipient of accusations, Ibrahim now firmly controlled the narrative. He paused briefly, allowing the gravity of his statements to resonate fully. Delegates exchanged quick, uneasy glances, recognizing the depth and precision of Ibrahim's response. Cameras captured Caroline's increasingly uncertain expression, her previously unshakable confidence now visibly shaken in these few carefully chosen sentences. Ibrahim had done more than merely respond. He had reframed the entire debate. No longer was he merely defending his government, he was holding a mirror up to Caroline and, by extension, to all those in the hall who had silently endorsed her accusations, having reclaimed the stage. Ibrahim pressed forward calmly, his voice steady but sharpened with controlled intensity. The delegates now listened carefully, understanding that he was not merely defending himself, he was systematically dismantling Caroline's moral authority. Let's be clear about something, Ibrahim began, his eyes meeting those of delegates around the room with quiet conviction. The democracy you speak of, has it truly brought freedom, or is it simply a justification for intervention, destabilization, and violence? He paused briefly, allowing his question to linger, heavy and unanswered. Delegates shifted uneasily, recognizing the uncomfortable truth hidden within his words. When bombs fell on Baghdad, the world was told it was liberation. But tell me what freedom emerged from the ruins. Ask the countless innocent civilians whose lives were shattered by missiles labeled democracy. His voice, while calm, carried unmistakable authority. Delegates who had previously nodded along with Caroline's accusations now exchanged hesitant glances, clearly disturbed by the clarity and boldness of Ibrahim's challenge. Or Libya. Ibrahim continued, his tone unwavering, relentless but dignified. Once a nation with structure and stability, now plunged into endless chaos. Your so-called democratic interventions left behind fractured societies, torn apart by violence. Is this the democracy you proudly export? Caroline shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her earlier confidence visibly eroding. Ibrahim didn't spare her from his gaze, directly confronting the hypocrisy at the heart of her accusations. You accuse us of oppression, of censorship, yet when your actions silence millions through displacement, destruction, and despair, do you truly hold moral superiority? His words resonated profoundly, striking at the core of the delegate's conscience. No longer was the debate merely about Burkina Faso. Ibrahim had elevated the conversation, forcing the international community to reckon with their own complicity with deliberate calmness. He concluded, if democracy is genuinely universal, it cannot be selectively applied, nor delivered through bombs or coercion. It must emerge organically from the people's own aspirations, shaped by their own choices, not imposed by outside forces. The room fell utterly silent. Journalists scribbled furiously, capturing every powerful phrase, knowing this speech would echo well beyond the walls of the conference hall. Ibrahim had shifted not only the momentum, but the entire moral narrative. Leaving Caroline and all who supported her facing questions they had long avoided, Ibrahim allowed his previous statements to settle deeply into the delegates' minds. The room's silence intensified, reflecting both anticipation and discomfort. Recognizing that he had successfully shifted the conversation, Ibrahim now moved purposefully toward addressing another critical issue, the subtle yet powerful control over global media narratives. He spoke deliberately, clearly articulating a reality delegates rarely acknowledged openly. The international perception of nations like Burkina Faso was shaped predominantly by powerful global media outlets, often based thousands of miles away. These outlets decided whose stories were amplified and whose narratives were conveniently ignored, painting complex realities with broad, often unfair strokes. Ibrahim methodically exposed this systemic bias, highlighting how Africa's genuine achievements were often overshadowed by narratives of instability and dependency. This carefully managed image served foreign interests rather than the interests of African nations themselves. It reinforced negative stereotypes, legitimized unwarranted interventions, and justified the paternalistic attitude many Western powers continued to adopt. As Ibrahim elaborated, the delegates listened carefully, their discomfort increasingly evident. Caroline, previously confident and assured, now displayed visible signs of unease. Her fingers tapped nervously against her notes, betraying growing agitation. Ibrahim's measured dismantling of her earlier arguments had clearly unsettled her confidence, forcing delegates and media professionals alike to question their own assumptions. Slowly but decisively, Ibrahim posed rhetorical questions, compelling the audience to confront uncomfortable truths. Who decided what news was worthy of global attention? Who controlled the frameworks through which millions viewed the world? The delegates began to quietly acknowledge the unspoken answers. It was clear that real freedom of speech and freedom from manipulation required challenging dominant narratives rather than passively accepting them. He noted calmly but pointedly the paradoxical accusation leveled against him, accusations of censorship by powers who themselves decided whose stories received international legitimacy and whose remained unheard. Ibrahim's logical yet relentless approach stripped away layers of hypocrisy, forcing a reckoning within the minds of his listeners. Then, with careful deliberation, Ibrahim leaned forward, allowing his measured gaze to sweep across the hall, finally settling firmly on Caroline. His voice resonated deeply with conviction and authority. If your definition of freedom is controlling whose truths are heard and whose are silenced, perhaps it's time to reconsider who truly practices censorship. After a brief pause, he added firmly, "True freedom means every voice matters, not just those convenient to your narrative." The room fell silent again, the delegates now forced to grapple deeply with the implications of Ibrahim's profound words. Ibrahim's final words resonated powerfully throughout the hall, plunging the delegates into a profound silence. The previous tension shifted subtly, evolving from discomfort into quiet introspection. Delegates who moments earlier had passively accepted Caroline's accusations now felt compelled to reconsider their positions. Ibrahim's dignified yet uncompromising stance had clearly unsettled the carefully constructed narrative presented by Caroline. Caroline herself sat rigidly, her self-assured composure clearly fractured. She averted her gaze slightly, visibly struggling to mask her discomfort. Her calculated confidence had been undermined by Ibrahim's carefully chosen, undeniable truths, exposing vulnerabilities in her argument and credibility. The room remained quiet, yet a deeper, unspoken dialogue had begun. Some delegates exchanged thoughtful glances, quietly acknowledging the strength and integrity demonstrated by Ibrahim. Others shifted uneasily, wrestling internally with the uncomfortable truths he had laid bare. Journalists, alert to the changing dynamics, captured subtle shifts in body language. Cameras zoomed discreetly on faces reflecting genuine uncertainty, a stark contrast to the earlier unified condemnation of Ibrahim. Reporters sensed clearly that the narrative had dramatically shifted. The story was no longer a straightforward accusation against an African leader, but rather a deeper exploration of global hypocrisy. In this quiet storm, Ibrahim remained calm, composed, and respectful, embodying the leadership qualities previously questioned, without aggression or hostility. He had quietly reclaimed moral authority, subtly but decisively shifting global perceptions not merely of himself, but of the very nature of truth, justice, and international accountability, shortly after Ibrahim's impactful words. The global media landscape rapidly began to shift. Reporters, sensing the profound depth and sincerity behind Ibrahim's statements, swiftly adjusted their coverage. Headlines that initially condemned Ibrahim as authoritarian now became more nuanced, acknowledging the powerful points raised during his speech. International news outlets, once eager to amplify Caroline's accusations, suddenly faced the necessity to present both perspectives equally. On social media, excerpts from Ibrahim's speech quickly went viral. Users worldwide debated fiercely, with many applauding his courage in addressing uncomfortable truths that powerful nations preferred to avoid. Ibrahim's calm yet potent challenge sparked widespread introspection about media bias and global double standards. Caroline's earlier dominance in the narrative weakened noticeably as online discourse grew increasingly sympathetic towards Ibrahim. Commentators highlighted his dignified composure, balanced arguments, and unwavering resolve to stand firm against external pressure. Even influential opinion leaders, previously critical, acknowledged that Ibrahim's carefully articulated points deserved genuine consideration. Back in Geneva, delegates discreetly checked their phones, noticing the changing global discourse reflected online. The hall buzzed quietly with subdued conversations, marked by newfound respect and thoughtful reevaluation. Ibrahim's ability to shift international attention had not relied on loud aggression, but rather quiet strength, authentic truth, and undeniable integrity. In this transformed narrative environment, Caroline found herself increasingly isolated, the initial confidence and clarity of her accusations giving way to uncertainty. Ibrahim, meanwhile, stood quietly confident, his principles reaffirmed, his leadership unquestioned, and his message resonating deeply and globally. As the conference drew to a close, the once charged hall was now marked by an atmosphere of reflective quietness. Ibrahim's carefully articulated arguments had left delegates profoundly impacted, many visibly reconsidering their earlier stances. Those who initially sided with Caroline's aggressive accusations now hesitated, aware that her case had significantly weakened under Ibrahim's composed but compelling counterpoints. Caroline herself sat quietly, her previously assertive posture subdued. The confident arrogance that marked her initial confrontation had given way to visible uncertainty. Realizing the shift of perception within the hall, she avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable under scrutiny that now shifted subtly toward her. Delegates began standing, gathering their belongings. Several representatives discreetly approached Ibrahim, extending respectful handshakes and expressing quiet appreciation for his measured yet courageous stance. It was evident that Ibrahim had not merely defended himself successfully, but had managed to challenge and reshape global perceptions profoundly. Journalists swiftly captured these subtle yet significant interactions, recognizing the unmistakable sign of Ibrahim's diplomatic and moral victory, his strength, founded not on aggression, but dignity, calm reasoning, and undeniable integrity, resonated deeply beyond the confines of the hall. Even the harshest critics present were compelled to recognize Ibrahim's unwavering principles. The atmosphere clearly reflected his victory not through dominance or forceful rhetoric, but through calm clarity and thoughtful sincerity. In contrast, Caroline remained isolated. Her earlier momentum had dissipated entirely, leaving behind only discomfort and uncertainty. She knew, perhaps for the first time, that the moral ground she claimed so boldly had crumbled beneath Ibrahim's dignified strength. This moment marked a clear turning point. Ibrahim had won more than just a diplomatic confrontation. He had decisively secured respect, legitimacy, and moral authority, reaffirming his leadership and integrity in the eyes of the global community. As delegates slowly dispersed, a young diplomat from Haiti approached Ibrahim, a respectful smile illuminating his face, extending a firm handshake. He quietly spoke words filled with sincerity and gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. President. Today, You spoke truths that many think, but few dare to voice. Ibrahim responded with a subtle yet warm smile, his eyes conveying both humility and conviction. "It's our responsibility," he said gently, "to speak not just for ourselves, but for all who seek genuine independence." Other delegates who overheard the quiet exchange paused momentarily, reflecting thoughtfully on his profound statement. Ibrahim's words resonated, carrying a deeper significance, a gentle yet powerful reminder of the importance of integrity, sovereignty, and the courage to speak uncomfortable truths. Journalists nearby discreetly recorded this interaction, recognizing its profound symbolic importance. It captured a moment that transcended mere diplomatic politeness, becoming a poignant reflection of Ibrahim's character and the moral victory he had achieved. Caroline, from across the hall, observed the respectful exchange silently, her earlier confidence replaced by genuine introspection. She recognized Ibrahim had succeeded in something far greater than simply defending himself. He had successfully reframed the entire debate, elevating conversations around global democracy, independence, and justice. In this quiet yet powerful moment, Ibrahim's earlier words echoed profoundly within every delegate. His steadfast adherence to truth and dignity had not only won respect, but inspired deep reflection and dialogue among those present. It was evident that Ibrahim had set a new standard for honest discourse, clearly demonstrating how integrity could triumph even amidst political confrontation. As Ibrahim left the hall, delegates watched respectfully, fully aware they had witnessed more than a diplomatic victory. They had experienced the rare presence of a leader whose strength came not from power or domination, but from dignity, clarity, and the unshakable pursuit of truth. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of personal growth and empowerment.